Hi friends, welcome to Raising Lifelong Learners. I'm your host, Colleen Kessler, and this is the podcast where I encourage you to trust yourself and your differently wired kiddos as you help cultivate their curiosity, encourage them to discover the world around them, embrace who they are wired to be, all while helping them discover their passions, interests, and raise them to become the amazing adults they're meant to be. Hey, welcome back. Today I am talking to a good friend of mine, Mary Hanna Wilson. Mary Wilson is the founder of CelebrateABook.com, and she also teaches these amazing book clubs on OutSchool. And we are going to talk about doing book clubs with your kids, whether you join her classes on OutSchool or not, though, I spoiler alert, I really think you should. Because she's phenomenal. She is so wonderful at helping kids talk about books. You're going to love this episode. It's so practical. It's so down to earth. It is so incredibly wonderful. And Mary is just a delight. I love talking to her, and I love sharing her resources because they're phenomenal. Before we begin, I want to thank CTC Math for being our sponsor. We really appreciate them and their generous support. Check them out at ctcmath.com. I'm going to talk a little bit about them later on in today's episode, so just stay tuned. But let's get on with this conversation with Mary Wilson because you are going to love it. Pop those earbuds in and let's start chatting. Are you a homeschooling parent with a child struggling with reading, writing, or spelling? Lexercise can help. Their online platform offers self-paced learning and expert instruction customized to your child's needs, all based on the Orton-Gillingham approach. We used Lexercise back when Logan was first diagnosed with dyslexia when she was, 8 or 9. And oh my goodness, the personalized support they gave us, the attention to detail, the program itself was just incredible, and Logan grew leaps and bounds. I'm so proud to have them as a sponsor for the podcast right now because more people need to know about their services. You can join thousands of families who have seen effective results, including mine, and have unlocked their child's love of learning. Visit lexercise.com/learners for a free learning disability screener and to learn more about their programs. Check them out and let me know what you think. Ask me if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer them or direct you to my contacts at Lexercise. But if you have a kiddo who struggles with reading, writing, or spelling, you definitely want to check out lexercise.com/learners and see what they can offer you. All right, let's get on with today's episode. I am so excited to be here with my good friend, Mary Wilson from Celebrate a Book. We have not talked in a while, so this is exciting. We're trying hard not to go off on tangents and catch up on life, but it's so exciting to have you here. Mary, thanks for being here today.
You're welcome. I'm so glad to be here. This will be lots of fun.
It will be. We always have so much to talk about. Okay, before we get started, before we dive in, because there's so many fun things we can talk about, why don't you take a minute? And for those who may have never heard of your site or you, just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, your family, what you do, and just give us a good introduction to you.
All right. Hello, I am Mary Wilson. I am a homeschooling mom of 4 grown children now who have been homeschooled the entire time, with the exception of 5 days of public school for one of them. But my kids are now 21. My 21-year-old daughter is about to graduate from UNCW. And then I have a 19-year-old daughter who is at the local community college for graphic design. And then I have a 17-year-old son who is just finishing up his junior year. And I have a 14-year-old son who is just finishing up his freshman year of college. And so I began doing more online as my kids have gotten older. So from running a website, which I have done for years, I have now added teaching online book clubs for kids. This was something I loved in my own homeschool, and now I'm able to do it online for other homeschooled students. And so I teach monthly book clubs on OutSchool and weekly graphic novel clubs. And that has just been such a joy to continue discussing literature with kids, even as my kids are not just over it, but don't have the time for it anymore. And it has just been so much fun.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things we don't talk about enough in the homeschooling circles. We talk so much about all the things you can do with your kids and all of the sweet moments that you have as homeschooling parents. But when they get older, they're busy and you're busy in a different
See.
way. So you don't have time to do all those things anymore.
No, you really don't, especially not with everyone. You
Right.
might be able to grab one or two of them, depending on how many you have, but trying to get all four of them to do anything once the oldest was in high school, it was always like the three of us then and me. And then suddenly it was the two of us. And this year I'm like staring at my freshmen and we're like, oh, it's just us all the time. What are we supposed to do? Book discussions aren't quite the same.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. I was having, this is a total tangent, and we'll get back to book clubs in a second, but I was having a conversation with my 14-year-old. So mine are 21, 16, 14, and 11. And it's the same thing. The 21-year-old, he's an entrepreneur. So he's at home doing all his things and out and about. You can't count on him to be around, except when I need a third driver in the house, because that's his rent. His rent is you can live here for free and have food, but if I need you to drive, sorry, my needs trump yours. So that's been really helpful, actually. But we're going in so many different directions. My 14-year-old and I were having this conversation about my daughter Molly's in a show right now, and it's her junior year high school musical. And my 14-year-old and I were talking about the seniors in this show, how their moms this weekend are experiencing their kids' last high school musical. And Logan looked at me and said, think about the I didn't think about the fact that moms go last. Like, there was the last time you carried me, mom. And we went down this like rabbit trail of all of these. She's like, I know first, but I never thought about lasts. And next year you're going to have all these lasts with Molly when she graduates. And I was like, yes, so hard being a parent. But you have that last, like all of you sitting around doing your morning stuff. Or we used to have these, I don't know, graham cracker and hot chocolate like meets at the table for like table time work. I don't even remember when that we last did that, but there was a last time for those group sessions.
Yes, it's so true. The last morning meeting times you just don't think about.
So we're going to talk about your book club specifically, but in general, let's talk about that idea of using book clubs and literature when we're teaching so many parents, especially new parents who are listening to this podcast, new homeschooling parents, I'm saying, like maybe your kids are in elementary or you just pulled them out or you are thinking about homeschooling. I have so many people, and I know you do too from over the years, ask you about your curriculum. And way back when we used to do all these curriculum posts, like what we were using each year.
Right.
And I know you, just like me, have gone away from over the years using specific curriculums for every single thing to doing it in a more organic way. Let's talk about teaching literature without having to rely on a specific curriculum, because you don't need a grammar and then a writing and then a literature and then a handwriting and all of these different like pieces to create a language arts curriculum. Like, you really just need books, right?
And mostly it obviously changes in high school. So I want to make it clear, like I'm really focused on the K-8 when I talk about some of the things that we do. But yeah, I just started to realize with my oldest, of course, I purchased all sorts of little book workbooks by title and different things. And we would be doing them. And I'd think, what are we doing? Like, what is the point of this? Some of it was fun. And that was cool to draw pictures of a scene or to do, but then some of it was just like these comprehension questions that were sometimes really almost rhetorical. Like, what did Papa find in the barn? That was, you didn't have to think about that. You just had to listen to it. Yeah, you're checking to see if they're listening, but it just started to really bore us. And I just thought, I don't think we need to be doing this with every book. This is not fun. And I wanted my kids to love stories, to love reading, to love this idea of a great book discussion. And I started to think, what do I do? Like when I read a book and want to talk about it with a friend, what does that look like? And can I bring that enthusiasm that you still carry into adulthood to my children? The same thing that I'm doing. Yes, adding a little more because they're still in school, but just this idea of discussing great stories and then pulling in things I needed them to learn for literary analysis and things like that one day.
Yeah. And we forget that good writing and good grammar and even spelling, it comes from reading widely, reading good work, hearing through read alouds and audiobooks, well-written sentences, because then you don't. So my second, again, same thing. Like you make all the mistakes with your first, right? My second didn't do
Right.
much official language arts, but she is so well spoken. She is so articulate, and she intuitively knows when something doesn't sound right. She can't always tell exactly what's wrong with the sentence, but she knows it's not right. And then if she can't figure it out, she'll come ask, right? And
Right.
you get that from being a great reader or lover of literature. You don't necessarily need the breakdown. Now, there are times my 11-year-old right now is doing a language arts workbook. It is a really typical language arts workbook that's got little passages with comprehension questions and some grammar thrown in there and things like that. He's doing it not because I don't believe he can get it through literature. He's doing it because, number one, I'm really busy with the big kids.
Yeah.
And so he needs something tangible to say he did some school today. And then two, he is an 11-year-old boy who does not sit at all. And it's one of those building stamina things. Do one page. Okay,
Yeah.
now we're going to do 2 pages. So he can sit, and eventually he'll be able to sit and write a paragraph and an essay and whatever,
Yes.
because sometimes you just need to build the understanding that, like, at some point you're going to be in a class and someone's going to tell you to do something.
Absolutely. I think about that with other things. And I think that's the important question to be asking is like I was asking myself when I was doing this with my third grader, what is the point?
Right.
Why am I doing this? And if there is a reason, by all means, continue. It might be a literature reason. It might be right now in our season of life, this is the only way any reading and check is getting done. It might be stamina. But for me at that time, there wasn't a great reason. I was like, oh, I'm doing it because it's the thing you're supposed to do when you read a book. And so I pulled away from that. But by all means, I have no issue with literature books and guides. There's a place for that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had to build up stamina for different things like test taking, quiz taking, things that I'm not a big fan of, but you have to learn to do. So absolutely, there is a place for all of these things. It's just not the only way.
Okay, so let's talk about what it looks like. What does it look like when you're sitting down with your kids, K through 8, and having a book club, having a book discussion like that, and pulling in the different areas of literature?
Yeah. So the easiest for me to talk about is how I do it with my book clubs online
Okay,
now, because
yeah,
that's what
perfect.
I'm actively doing. So when I'm looking at the school year, roughly 9 months, I'm picking 9 titles. I like the idea of a book a month. Can kids who love to read more than that? Absolutely. But one that we're focusing in on some of the skills I want to build. One a month seems to work well. Some people might like 6 weeks. Some people might like shorter, but that's the general thing for me. And I like to look at the year as a whole and just decide what are some of the literature terms I want my kids to know. So in September or sometime in the beginning of the year, I generally pick a book and go over like the plot, the story arc, to introduce words like climax and spark event and rising action, things like that, because we're going to use these words. And then during the year, I think, what are some other things I want them to learn? I want them to learn characterization, how to talk about characters. I don't have to do that in every single book that we read all year. You're naturally going to do that a little bit, but I want to pick a book during the year and just really make sure we hit that hard. What I mean by hitting it hard, I will print out a character traits list for that particular title, and we'll really spend time looking at what did these characters do that make you think that. And I won't do that for every book, but I'll make sure to do it for one. And then for another book, I might focus on setting, where we do that fun stuff like drawing a picture of the setting or making a diorama of the setting or talking about how the setting is being used to tell this story. I might want to talk about just different genres. What makes a book a historical fiction? What makes it a science fiction? And make sure I'm introducing that. So for me, it's making a list of here's some of the things I want to hit with my kids and just assigning one a month. And with great literature, you can pretty much do any of these with any of the books. Obviously, some books lend themselves better to something like point of view. You want to maybe pull a book with a rotating point of view to introduce this idea, and then you can talk about it in other titles. So for me, that just became the easiest thing to do. What do I want my focus to be this month? I want to talk about narration, or I want to talk about this. And you didn't have to hit everything every year. Part of it was seeing that like big picture. Oh my gosh, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about theme this year. Okay, we'll get it next year. It's okay. And seeing that progression. So for me, that's what it started to look like. It's just really great, thoughtful book discussion questions that had a point each month, had a focus,
Mhm.
and then talk about other things. And that's what I always looked for when I'm either Googling or searching for a guide, is just a guide that had really thoughtful questions, not one sentence answers. There might be a place for that if you're trying to help people pay attention or you have some goals there, but something that made them think about what would you change in the actions of this character or anything like that.
I love that. And there are a couple things in there that I want to go back to. The first is when you talk about roughly one book a month, every 6 weeks or whatever, and then you said, but of course, kids can read more. I think it's an important distinction for parents who are listening to remember that you don't have to have a lesson about everything you do in your world, right? As a homeschool mom,
right?
Inclination often, how can we turn this into a lesson? How can we capitalize on this so they're motivated? How can we let them just read? My 14-year-old right now has discovered late compared to some people, but she also has dyslexia and is like now a switch was flipped and is this voracious reader. She's discovered the Wings of Fire series and is just feasting on them. So yesterday she had been looking on Amazon because as we're recording this, because she wanted book 6 and the box set for books 6 through 10 were like 60% off. So of course I bought that and it was waiting for us this morning because Amazon's really eerie now. You order it last night and it's
right
at your doorstep at 4 a.m. So I'm not going to see her for the next several days because she's just going to be eating these. I'm not going to sit there and have philosophical discussions about the Wings of Fire series because that's not the series to do that with right now. We could find other books to talk about, but I also want my kids to read for its own sake. So we have to remember as parents, no matter, yes, okay, so I talk about interest-led learning all the time. I talk about honing in on kids' passions and using those as a lens to get them motivated to learn. But we don't have to turn everything into a lesson. And that goes with books too. So let them read, encourage them to read, spread a feast around them so they discover new titles, and then focus on your 6 to 9 titles for the year for those lessons. So if you've been a listener of the podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about CTC Math for the last couple of years. They have been supportive sponsors of the podcast. And as I've told you before, I'm a customer. My kids use CTC Math in their homeschool. I am a paying subscriber and have been for a number of years, even before CTC sponsored the podcast. I am a raving fan and I will continue talking about their resources and their program until long after I'm done homeschooling because I think it's really versatile for so many different types of families, whether your kids are super strong in an area or super weak in an area of math. It allows you to customize their education when it comes to math. I've talked to so many families over the years, but I want to share with you a message that I received from Sandy, a longtime listener who was content in what they were using until, again, they weren't, and they switched over to CTC Math based on a recommendation that they'd heard on the podcast. Sandy writes, "We too started using CTC Math following your recommendation, Colleen. One of my sons is so dedicated. Then, after watching over his shoulder, my other son started using it too. They both now do an hour each workday by choice. I even enjoy it myself. I do the lessons with them, which is a handy brush up, and will occasionally do some of the algebra lessons ahead of time. Math was not my strong suit in school, but now I love it, and I wish the program had been available in the 80s. Too many people think they're terrible at math, but I truly believe we all just need a method of learning that suits us. CTC Math seems to work for all 3 of us." So check out ctcmath.com or go to the link over in the show notes for this episode and click on it to go over there and see the offer that they have for podcast listeners. You don't have to just take my word for it. You can take Sandy's as well. CTC is a great program and could be a wonderful benefit for your homeschool. All right, let's get back to today's episode. I've talked to so many moms, like in our group, right, who in our kind of like world of people who have been writing online for a long time and doing these things with our kids before the pandemic made homeschooling so much more like mainstream. We would talk about how to get our kids motivated. And this parent would say, they're into Legos, so I'm going to do this with Legos and this with Legos. And then they don't want to do it because now Legos aren't fun for them anymore because that's school. So we want to make sure that we're separating to some degree. we also want to make sure that we're capitalizing on that. But the other thing you said, and this I want to talk about a little bit more, I think it's super important to reiterate too. You don't have to do everything with every book, and you don't have to do everything every year. Can we talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that was just something I started to naturally grow into because at the beginning, you're feeling like this pressure. What if my kid doesn't understand theme? What if they don't understand conflict? And all these terms are coming at you when you're and you have this little 8-year-old and you're
Right?
feeling so overwhelmed. And I think that's the beauty of the perspective you get as you start to have these high schoolers and older kids, as you get this big picture. And I started to realize probably around her 5th grade-ish year, okay, you know what? One focus for each book actually seems to help her solidify it better than throwing all these things at her and her not really remembering any, just like skimming the surface. It's got deep dive
Yeah.
instead. Let's do a deep dive on theme. And then we might, yeah, discuss that really interesting character or the conflict in this book or the climax was really fun and exciting. And we want to talk about that. But we're really going to make sure I'm helping coach her through this idea of theme. And then next month, we'll focus in on something else. And it's just allowing that to sink in and develop the skills. Because, of course, the goal isn't now with an 8-year-old, you are still, your deep dives are little dives, right? They're shallow dives. But when you're getting to middle school, and again, you're reapproaching theme, we're now asking deeper questions. We're asking kids to defend their reasoning. Where do you see that message playing out in this book? And we're having deeper conversations. We don't want to also be trying to have those deep conversations about every single topic in that book. So it just really allows the time you need to do those deeper dives when you want to do them.
Yeah. And like you said, you're going to come back to it. You're trying, when they're young, you're trying to expose them widely and then hone in more and more as they get older. And then as they get into those high school years, you're finding what they need to be successful in the kind of career path they're going towards. And if they don't know, then you're continuing to spread it widely because I think that speaking as a parent of high schoolers, the idea that our kids have to know what they're going to do when they graduate is silly. And our society has hammered that in. I have a 21-year-old who has all sorts of different little irons in various fires and is figuring out where he really wants to focus, but he's entrepreneurial and he's trying to figure out which one he wants to go all in on, and he's doing multiple things. I have a 16-year-old who's known what she wanted to do since she was 8. And then I've got a 14 and 11-year-old who are like, I don't really know. And it's okay to not know. So in high school, if they've got that passion and they know what they want to do, you can do those deep dives in the areas that are going to help them the most stand out as they're applying for schools or getting ready to launch a business or whatever. And then if they don't know, you can still go wider, but more depth into those wide things you're touching on. And so you get this adaptability by giving them exposure to all those different things in a cyclical manner throughout elementary and middle school.
Yeah. Which, okay, little side story then, because I think it reflects this in the literature world. I like to expose my kids to a variety of literature. So that includes like free verse poetry. That's become really popular, novel and verse. Graphic novels, we know I'm a big fan of.
Yes.
All my kids read some graphic novels as part of our literature study during the younger years. Now, my oldest, it's not really her thing. She's not into them. So I exposed her to it. We did a deep dive on at least 2 titles I can think of during her K-8 experience. Now, my second daughter is my theater kid, my artsy kid, my graphic designer. And so my husband and I, her 8th grade year, we decided her entire literature year would be graphic novels. Because one of the things we said is exactly what you're saying. I said to him, let's be honest. If this kid ever writes a book, it's going to be a graphic novel. Right. So why don't we let her do a deep dive just on that format for the year and not worry about the world saying to me, oh my gosh, but you're not doing any literature books. No, I'm not. I've been doing literature books since she was 5, and we're going to let her take a deep dive into the thing that actually reflects the goals and interests and talents she seems to have. I think we do that with all of our subjects, and literature is another one. You got a kid loving history, you get to start modifying that.
Right.
Grabbing historical fictions that really light them up in high school. It's not that you ignore the other things, but you've been doing them so long that it's a great time to start taking those deep dives into areas of interest and talent and skills.
Yeah, it is. And okay, so back on the graphic novels, I think that they get a bad rap. They really do. And so for those of you listening who have neurodivergent kids, graphic novels taught my dyslexic to read because it took the
Wow.
pressure off. So she could take, I remember she loves theater. She doesn't love being on stage, but she loves theater and loves good stories. So if there's a good show that her sister's in, she wants to go to every production of it. She wants to go to every show with me. And one of those was Anne of Green Gables, but she didn't know the story. And so I bought this beautiful graphic novel version of Anne of Green Gables, and she like just poured through it every day, and she'd reach the end and she'd start back over until she understood what was going on. And then seeing it in the stage production and then comparing it, she ended up reading the actual book a
Oh,
year
wow.
later. But graphic novels gave her the entry point by taking off the pressure of having to decipher all of those words on a page because it was mostly pictures supporting the words. And there's some really sophisticated language in graphic novels.
Yeah, there is. After I've mentioned that I teach a weekly graphic novel class online, and so I think I just finished 2.5 years of it. I've read a lot of graphic novels because I've read a different one every week now for 2.5, 3 years. Oh, there's so much you can do with them. So everything we're talking about, characterization, theme, conflict, plot, climate, you can address all of these in a graphic novel. And what's really fun is that a graphic novel adds another layer.
Yes.
Because not only are you talking about the story and all these plot elements, but then you're asking the question, how are the graphics supporting that storytelling? How are they adding? When we talk about emotions in the story, there might not have to be any words. How do you know exactly how that character's feeling? And we can talk about that. So I have just grown to love graphic novels. I'm glad they're starting to get more respect.
Right.
But they definitely deserve it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I'm, again, a huge proponent because I have proof in my family. Okay. So let's shift gears. It's just not even really shifting gears, but let's talk before we have to wrap up about how you teach these book clubs online. Because I know some parents are like, I don't know about online classes, or how do you actually get a good discussion going through a screen, which we know as teachers who have taught in person and have now learned to use this new medium, it is really possible to be super engaging and to engage great conversations. Can we just talk about how your book clubs are structured and a little bit more about what you do and what you offer to families?
Oh, sure. And that has been a learning curve. So
Yeah.
it's nice that I'm on my 3rd year of this because you do learn, because it is different. It definitely is different. And I'm a big proponent of in-person book clubs, but it's just not always possible in our timelines, in our busy lives, in areas where we live. So it has been such a great substitute. And I have seen it just work so well, the format. So in general, coming up with ways that everyone can interact. In my book clubs, you are not required to speak, to share verbally your thoughts about a book. And that has been really nice. Some kids have a lot of anxiety about that, or they have some verbal things going on. It takes them longer to process and they don't want the pressure of that in a class. So I just allow everyone, raise your hand if you want to speak. If you don't, I'm not going to call you out. It is Zoom. So you can use the chat. You can type your thoughts and then I read them out loud to everyone and we can have a discussion about your thoughts without you feeling the pressure to share it. The kids love to use the emojis. Give the thumbs up as someone's talking, give the little party sign. So there's different ways you can do that and still feel like part of the discussion. I've also found I try now to plan a question that is shallow and fun. One that gets everybody kind of talking because it's about them more than it is about the book. And I have found that a really engaging way, especially with the middle schoolers. The 8 to 10-year-olds tend to want to tell you everything anyway.
Yes, they do.
But the middle schoolers have started to get quieter. I try somewhere halfway in there to do something. And then we always end with a game. They love Would You Rather. And we try to make it about the book. Come up with a would you rather question based on the book. Books categories. We did Never Have I Ever this year with different things. And just something that kind of makes the classroom feel like a place you want to be. And you can feel relaxed there. You're getting to know the people, even though it changes a little throughout the year. There's some people, the large majority are there the whole year. So you have that kind of connection as well. And they just learn to take turns to piggyback on other people's ideas. And of course, as a facilitator, you're doing a lot of that. Oh, what a great idea. What do you all think of that? And allowing other people to contribute as well. But it has worked out splendidly. And of course, some of it too is the class size. Let's be honest, from the teacher perspective, I start with a certain number. And then as I'm getting to know the students, I'll know, can I open up more because this is a particularly quiet group? Let's allow more kids in to really get that discussion going. Or are we good here? And we're going to limit the number. If somebody happens to leave, we're not even going to add more back in. So you kind of have to monitor that as well. And I think it's important for parents to know that for me, that's something I'm doing, making sure that everyone who wants to speak can and has time to do that. And we're going to get that kind of discussion going. And if your student wants to remain quiet, they can. And I've seen a lot start to open up over the year, and it's just wonderful.
Yeah, that's fun. So they don't, okay, so you publish the book list ahead of time. So they read before they come and they're discussing in there.
Yes. And then in the summer, I do book and movie clubs.
Oh, fun.
Which is fun. Of course, it's a great activity. You can do it at home with your own kids as well. But we discuss the book in the first meeting, and then we don't meet again for 2 or 3 days. So they have some time to watch the movie if they haven't seen it or just want to watch it again. And then we come back and we get to be all sorts of critical about how they put that book. And sometimes we all love it. But I think it's such a great and easy way for kids to share opinions, because if you have ever read a book and then watched the movie with your kids, you know they have opinions.
Yes, they do.
And it's a great way to pull them out.
It is. It's one of the strategies I used to use when I was a classroom teacher too, because it's a really easy way to talk about comparing and contrasting and other people's interpretation, right? Because you're taking the screenwriter's interpretation of an author's work, and then what do you think the author thinks about this rendition and whatever. There's so many great things you can do when you discuss those differences. And my kids have grown up now doing that with me anyway. And we talk about play adaptations and things like that too. And it's just a natural part of our conversations. And I think that it's a great way to get kids involved in those kinds of critical thinking discussions in a fun, safe way.
I agree. It's like perfect for summer too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this episode is airing right in the middle of your summer book and movie clubs, and you're about to open for registration in the fall. I do know, for those of you listening, that Mary's spots fill up really quickly because these are all in-person classes, so they're all limited in space. So can you tell us a little bit about A, how they would find out about your classes, and B, like if there's somewhere they can go to sign up to get notified like ahead of time so they can have an edge when they're trying to get into classes. And you don't have to commit to a full year. Like you can go, month to month and then see. So you're not like, okay, I have to get in and lock my space. So talk a little bit about the logistics of getting involved in your classes.
Okay. All right. So my classes are on OutSchool. So a really easy way to find me is to go to the OutSchool website, type in my name, Mary Hanna Wilson, and it'll take you to my teacher profile page. The confusing thing about that is if the classes are full, it will not show them. You have to go to a button that says by request, and then you can see all the classes I'm teaching. But because they're full, they won't actually show them to you on my page. So I actually have a link. I can send it to you.
Yeah, we'll post all of the links.
Yeah, on my website that shows all of my book clubs, and it will take you to their actual class description page. You can kind of read about the school year book club. Sometime by mid-June, all the titles will be on there for the new year, and you can see all those. And as you said, so on July 1st at noon Eastern, I try to split the difference for everyone. At noon Eastern, registration opens up and all the sections will be available, and they do fill pretty quickly, but all the titles will be there. And like you said, you can come and go. It's what OutSchool considers an ongoing class. So once you have registered, you are guaranteed your spot. If you choose to stay, you have your spot every month. But if your child, it doesn't work for them, they don't like the online environment, they don't like me, that's okay. Then they can withdraw at any time. And you're only charged the week before that class. So you have plenty of time class that's only once a month to make your decision. Like, hey, is this working for us? Maybe there's a title you just don't really like. The only downside of you're pulling out for just one title is you might lose your spot. And then you have to join the wait list to get back in if all the classes are full. And I do keep a wait list. And if you're on my email list, you don't get an advantage to register early or anything, but you do get that email reminder because I will send it out and say, hey, it's time to register, or hey, tomorrow's registration, remember. So you're going to get those reminders from me. And in our busy lives, those reminders are very key. So that is the advantage of being on the email list, is at least getting a heads up.
Yeah. So we'll definitely post links to Mary's OutSchool profile, the page where she lists everything, and then a link to her email list too, so you can sign up. And so make sure you check that out because the clubs are really valuable. And I know there are so many people out there listening because I get the emails. What kinds of things can I do to get we can't go there's nothing around us. Like, how can I get my kids interested in other groups or talking with people real time? This is a way to do it while checking off one of those boxes, right? And also, one of the things I love, especially as my kids are getting older, we're pulled in so many different directions. It's a different kind of busy than it was when the kids were little. When the kids were little, we were all busy together. We all went to the same thing and then the next thing and the next thing. So it was a busyness that I was in control of. I got to choose where we went. And now it's a busyness where this one's got to be over here and this one's got to be over here, which again is why my son's rent is like driving for me because you just don't have it. So you just don't have the time. So I like having, as a mom of bigger kids who still need something, I like having options like that if I'm out with one kid, they can do something and connect with people.
Yes. And they can connect while they're out and about. I have to tell you, I have had kids come to book club from Epcot Center in Florida. Like, they loved book club so much. I take that as a high compliment.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
They wanted to have a snack in Epcot while attending book club. I have had them on a boat out in a lake on vacation. So the nice thing, or at the library, and some of it, a lot of kids in the car. Lots of kids in the car going places. And that is one of the beauties of that online format, is with your busy lives on the go as homeschool families, your kid can be participating in something that they're enjoying, that they're learning. For your 8 to 10-year-old, really, for me, that would have been plenty of instructive literature for the year, without a doubt.
Yeah, we have that too in the Learners Lab community, our membership community. We have a doodle club, like a drawing club, and a Lego club, along with our regular classes and stuff for both parents and kids. And same thing, I can't tell you how many kids like don't want to miss like the social meetups or the doodle club or the Lego club. And even my kids, I don't teach the Lego club. I have a guest teacher that comes in and does that, facilitates it. And we have laptop like Lego cases that has like a Lego whatever top and then a drawer that pulls out with all the loose pieces. And they have done that from the back seat of the car so many times while I'm driving. I hear Miss Janae talking to the kids about whatever they're building in Lego Club because they don't want to miss it. And then when I'm teaching the Doodle Club or whatever, there's so many kids with their little lap desks in their car seats or their booster seats or their like regular seats, and the whole family's drawing as dad drives or whatever. It's so fun. It's so fun. But then it's also that the coolest thing I think about homeschooling is we can be on the go and still have these great opportunities because we have the flexibility to bring them with us.
Absolutely. I love that.
I love it too. Okay, so this is a great discussion. There's so many things that parents can remember. I want you to, if you're listening, remember that when it comes to thinking about curriculum, especially because this episode, we're recording a little earlier, but it's airing in the summer, as you're really thinking about your fall choices and the different things you're going to do. You don't have to have a curriculum for everything. Good books, good experiences, great discussions can really make your homeschool rich, and think outside the box a little bit when it comes to what you're doing with your kids. And just remember, like, you have this amazing gift of being able to customize what you're doing to your kids and your own family. So take advantage of that. Mary, what would you want to add? Is there anything you would want to add to parents of elementary, middle school, high schoolers who are like trying to figure all this out before we go? What's the last thing that you want to leave them with?
I mean, you just covered a lot of it about not being afraid to cater things that their kids need. And I guess what we talked about is like releasing themselves of that anxiety of needing everything to be covered either by a certain age or by a certain grade or in a given school year, just releasing that and just knowing that there's plenty of time, plenty of opportunity, and it will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Okay, tell everybody where they can find you online. I'll link to everything, but just go ahead and let them know.
All right, my website is maryhannawilson.com. The big thing there is the Hannah does not have an H on the end. It's not a middle name. It's a maiden name, maryhannawilson.com. And then on Instagram, it's Mary Wilson blog. I think everything else is Mary Hanna Wilson on TikTok, YouTube. I have a lot now. So for parents who are listening or like, I don't even know how I would discuss theme or what I would do with this book. I have a series now called Book Chats where after my book clubs, I've hopped on and been like, hey, here's 3 great discussions to have about this title. So the parents can do it at home because the online book club format isn't for everyone. So it's a way to encourage parents to feel equipped. Watch my 5 to 7 minute book chat. And then you've got some great discussions to have with your kids. So YouTube is another great place.
Love that. Okay, we'll link to all of that in the show notes. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for taking the time, being flexible with your time, and just being here to share with my listeners.
Okay. Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Okay, so for those of you listening, we'll be back same time, same place next week with another episode. You can find links to everything we talked about and all of Mary's stuff, all of her links, her wait list, everything, her book clubs on the show notes for this episode over at raisinglifelonglearners.com/podcast. And enjoy your kids this week. Go do something, read a book with them, embark on an adventure. You've got this. You are totally equipped to do this with your kids. Special thanks to our sponsor, CTC Math. I appreciate them. They're always so supportive. So check them out if you haven't had a chance to, ctcmath.com. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.